federal law to protect transgender workers. In addition to speaking to you today as an attorney who specializes in transgender legal issues, I'm also pleased to be able to speak to you as a transgender man. I was born female and transitioned from female to male several years ago. Some transgender people are fortunate to have support in the workplace. Very often, however, when a person discloses that they're transgender, or when the employer otherwise discovers the person's transgender status, learns of that status, that employee is very likely to face termination, harassment, or even violence. Just last year, for example, Steve Stanton had served as the city manager of Largo, Florida for 14 years. He was incredibly effective. He was very well respected in that position. He had just received a glowing evaluation. But literally, within days of discovering that Stanton was transgender, intended to transition from male to female, he was gone. The City Commission of Largo abruptly fired him and acknowledged that it was doing so because of his transgender status. Another case, small town in Vermont, hired an experienced law officer, police officer. Everything was going fine until a town official discovered on a website that the officer was transgender and was born female, had undergone sex reassignment many years earlier. That information was communicated to that officer's superiors, who then shamefully, deliberately embarked on a campaign to try and intimidate him into leaving his job, and even went so far as to endanger his physical safety by issuing him faulty security equipment. And he was driven from his job. And this discrimination came to light only because a former police chief disclosed what had happened to the Vermont Attorney General. Now, states and localities across the country are passing laws to address this type of discrimination. 12 states and the District of Columbia now have laws that protect transgender workers. Over 100 localities have also enacted local anti-discrimination laws. Many employers, both large and small, have voluntarily adopted policies that prohibit discrimination against their transgender workers, and those are very important advances. But we need more than a patchwork of state and local laws and employer policies. So the brutal reality is, in most places in this country, a transgender worker who's fired or harassed for being transgender has no legal protection. As a direct result, there are many people in the transgender community who are forced into chronic, persistent unemployment, poverty, and homelessness. Existing federal law does not prohibit workplace discrimination against transgender employees. That includes Title VII. As a logical matter, when a person is fired for changing his or her sex, a court should say that's sex discrimination, and it should be covered under Title VII. In practice, however, there is not a single federal court anywhere in the country that has held that Title VII prohibits discrimination against transgender workers because they are transgender. We need Congress to make clear that discrimination against transgender people because of their gender identity is against the law. Thank you for your leadership on this issue. Growing up in a small town in Texas, I literally could not have imagined this day. There are so many transgender people and our families all across the country waiting and hoping that you will take action to protect us. Thank you.
Mr. Minter, thank you very much for your testimony. I'd like to thank each of the witnesses for a very provocative, thoughtful testimony. We're going to try to have questions back and forth so we can draw out some of the points that have been made. First, I do want to introduce two things for the record. One is a letter without objection that will be entered from the Business Coalition for Workplace Fairness, dealing with these issues. I also do want to take a moment and thank some constituents and friends from New Jersey that are present today from Garden State Equality. The vice chair of that group, Barbara Casper-Sipperstein. Barbara, welcome. Babs, I should say. Lily Macbeth and Angela Rain. They're our constituents and friends. We're very glad that you're with us, as all of our guests today. I want to thank each of the witnesses for very thoughtful testimony, and Mr. Levy, I wanted to explore with you the concept of religious liberty and rights of conscience in the workplace and how it would interact with attempts to protect members of the transgender community. And you use an example that's saying forcing persons with beliefs, certain religious beliefs, to treat transgender as a valid concept is like forcing an Orthodox Jew to eat pork. It is the law, though, today, isn't it, that if an Orthodox Jew runs a law firm, that he or she could not refuse to employ a person because they're Catholic. Is that correct? If the law firm's larger than a certain size?
That would be correct.
Is that a violation of the Orthodox Jews' religious principles?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, what if the person says, look, my principles are that I want people who read the Scripture the way I do, who understand worship the way I do. So if someone believes that there's a human being who is supreme over all in the name of the Pope, I don't want someone who believes in papal supremacy working for me because it violates my understanding of the Scripture. Does that Orthodox Jewish law firm have the right to deny work to the Catholic applicant?
Under federal law?
Right.
No, he does not.
In your opinion, should they be able to?
I'm unaware of someone having a religious belief that employing someone with a different religious belief violates their conscience.
Well, of course, this is not a matter of someone having a different religious belief. I mean, what we're arguing about here is if someone believes that sexual identity at birth is a matter of religious belief, and someone who takes a different view applies for a job, I think your position is that to compel the employer to disregard that fact would be a violation of the employer's religious belief. Is that your position?
Not hiring someone with a different view, but I'm saying that there are people who have a deeply held religious view that employing someone in that circumstance would violate the religion.
What about this one? What about if someone's a member of a religion that's pacifist, that believes that taking up arms is a violation of their religious principles, and the center of their religious beliefs is pacifism? And the job applicant is a Marine Corps combat veteran. Does the pacifist have the right, do you think the pacifist should have the right to deny employment to the Marine Corps combat veteran because pacifism is a central tenet of their religious beliefs?
I don't see how that violates the religious beliefs of the pacifist.
So if someone believes that taking up arms and making war is central to there are religious faiths that believe that pacifism is this very central principle. And if someone doesn't follow that principle, you're saying that doesn't violate that central tenet or belief?
I would say that it would be very different if the person is actively engaging in war at the time the person...
What if the person's a Marine Corps reservist and they're going to be called up to active duty in all likelihood in a couple of months? That would be actively engaging in combat. How about that?
In that case, it may be a violation of the religious beliefs, but not one that would be accommodated under Title VII.
No, but I didn't ask you about Title VII. I asked what your opinion was. So is it your opinion that the pacifist employer should not be permitted to deny a job opportunity to the Marine reservist?
It is my opinion that the pacifist employer should probably have the right to do that.
Should?
Yes.
Okay. What about the member of a religion that is white supremacist? It says that simply believes that whites are a superior race. In your belief, should that employer have the right to deprive a job to an African American applicant?
I'm not aware of that as a religious belief, but no.
You think they should not have the right to?
Right.
So a faith that has racial supremacy as its core tenet is not a valid faith?